Welcome to the Darcy Naturals Wellness Series. During our series, we will present information on complementary and alternative medicine and how these natural, non-drug, non-surgical options can benefit your wellness and keep your loved ones healthy. Today we're going to talk about stress and can mind-body medicine help in the healing process. I'm Geoff Darcy, and I'm an acupuncturist herbalist at the Darcy Wellness Center. And with me in the studio today is Dr. Eva Selhub, a medical doctor who practices also at the Darcy Wellness Clinic in Natick. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you.
Maybe you could just, before we begin, just tell us a little something about your background and the research you've been involved in over the years.
Well, I've been practicing mind-body medicine for close to 10 years with now called the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital. That used to be called the Mind-Body Medical Institute, founded by Dr. Herbert Benson. So I've been studying mind-body medicine and techniques for a long time, and I also was an internist for 5 years working in primary care medicine. I left that on account of stress, and also because I wanted to find other modalities to help the healing process, and I didn't feel that the traditional Western medical practice was enough. And so I wanted to learn and incorporate the Eastern philosophies into my work.
So Dr. Benson really was one of the founders of the field, coining the term relaxation response.
That's right. That's right. Over 30 years ago, he found that with elicitation of the relaxation response, which is akin to any form of meditation, the mind and body would resume a natural state of quiet, thereby decreasing blood pressure, metabolic rate, heart rate, and other parameters that can go overboard with stress and cause health problems.
Right. So this is basically scientifically proving and bringing into the mainstream, you know, medicine that's being used in India, China, throughout the East, traditions of meditation and Qigong, similar, but actually proving it at the center.
That's right. It's making it quantifiable, and it's bringing it into the hands of people that might be resistant to it, if you will.
When we go to our first slide and just look at the toll that stress is taking, because it's taking an enormous toll. You know, 84% of doctors' office visits are stress-related. 80% of workers feel stress on the job. And here's a figure that really surprises me, that 25% have felt like screaming or shouting because of job stress. 14% felt like striking a coworker, and 10% are concerned that they fear someone might become violent in the workplace. That's pretty horrific figures.
They are, and actually the World Health Organization said that work stress was an epidemic across in the world. Yeah. You know, not just here in the United States, but yeah, I can think of many times when I wanted to scream and yell at work. So. And I was miserable at my other job, so it's very true.
I think everybody comes to a crunching point in their life or in their career where it gets overbearing. So what do you think is so different about today's society? Maybe this would be a good intro to the our second slide. Why do you think that, you know, the pace of life is become so stressful?
Well, I think, you know, we have to think about the technology. We have to think about demands that have been going on. We have to remember that we don't have the kind of life that we used to have, in that we have all these things like cell phones and computers and all these things that have made our life easy, but also have made us accessible to everybody. Yeah, and there's no time out.
That's right, no time out. Plus the idea of, you know, unfortunately for postal workers, there's actually a term now for violent workplace rage, and that's going postal. But the idea that growing psychological demands, job insecurity, having to work longer hours, so pace of life and information is really whipping along at a fast pace. So what's happening in our bodies when we probably most of us have experienced overwhelm of some kind or another? What's happening physiologically in our bodies, and why, do you think?
Well, in order to really actually understand the idea of overwhelm, you have to understand the idea of stress. Yeah. Because stress is in itself, on its own, for a short period, is not bad. It's actually necessary and beneficial for life. So it actually, you know, and stress comes in so many different forms. To get to the place of overwhelm, you really want to understand what stress is, what the physiology of stress is, or stress physiology, the stress response, how when that gets out of whack, you can have problems. You can have health problems, psychological problems, what have you, life problems. And it all translates to that overwhelmed sensation of the stress being too much. Yeah. Not that it's there, but too much of it.
So what's the good stuff about stress? What does stress prep our physiology to do? Why do, coming off the savannas of ancient Africa, why is it there? What does it do for us?
Well, first, like I said, the definition of stress, it's important to understand. It's a physiological term. It's not just I'm at work, I'm stressed, I'm upset, I'm stressed. It actually just means that the brain is perceiving it's being challenged by something it cannot handle. And I use the term brain because it's not necessarily something that's tangible to our conscious mind. It could be my blood sugar's dropped.
Right.
Or, and when my blood sugar drops, my brain says, oh, well, there's no sugar in my body. I need to go get some. That's stress. So what happens is it elicits an automatic and unconscious response to try to organize the mind and the body to create discomfort in the body so that then you can go create change. Because I don't consciously know that my blood sugar's dropped. So my body and brain will create a bunch of physiological changes. So the result will be that I will feel hungry, or I'll have a headache, or I'll get dizzy, which now my body has spoken to me and said, I have stress, go do something. And I say, oh, well, I'm hungry, I'm going to go eat something. So now what I've done is the body has encouraged me to make change so that then I can go and eat something to nourish myself. And once I do that, the stress is taken care of and the stress response will extinguish itself. And that's how it works. So stress is important to get us to create change. We would have no growth, we would have no technology, we would have nothing in life. We would be inert vegetables who didn't exist. We wouldn't accomplish anything, we wouldn't run marathons,
so the whole
we wouldn't
idea
put
is
food on the table.
Adaptation to
stress,
change.
adaptation to change, and to keep that stress and the stress response as shortly activated as possible, and so that the physiology of that stress remains beneficial rather than harmful.
So the idea then, the two nervous systems in the body, the parasympathetic and sympathetic, and the sympathetic is about making us more efficient when we're under a very stressful situation. So the idea of going out and killing your evening meal on the savannas of ancient Africa, dragging it back, having the stress of that in the sympathetic nervous system to make us more efficient, and then dragging it back to the village, having a nice meal with family and friends, a good night's sleep, that's where the parasympathetic kicks in.
That's right.
So the idea of making us more efficient, can you tell us a little bit about that under stress, the idea of adrenaline and noradrenaline, short muscle fiber?
If you look at the stress response, what happens is the brain is taking in signals all the time. And as it assesses these signals, it says, is this challenging? Is this not challenging? Do I have the ability to handle this challenge? And have I seen this challenge before? Because if I've seen it before, I'm going to do what I did the last time because we're efficient systems. So this includes, when you're born, you know nothing. But you learn eventually how to walk, how to talk, how to communicate, but all of those things were stress. Walking was stressful. But then you learned how to do it, and now you know how to do it, and you can enact those same muscle fibers, those same learned experiences to be able to enact whatever you need to do the next time around. So that's how we are efficient that way. So we learn from experiences. And so when the physiology of the stress response is set off, we have adrenaline and cortisol and other neuropeptides and hormones that are released that allow the physical changes to occur. One of which is the adrenaline keeps us hyper alert and hyper aroused. So we're vigilant. So
that's the
we're
idea,
aware.
Vigilant on the horizon for hunting the prey.
Anything. For anything that's going to be a challenge to my survival and well-being. Okay. Then we have so we're not going to sleep. Okay, it's not a good time. For instance, if I'm being chased by this wild, angry animal, it's not a good time for me to forage for food.
Or a wild, angry boss. The body knows no difference between the two.
Well, the mind does not distinguish between physical and psychological stress. It's all just a challenge to my well-being. So it doesn't matter. So every time I'm being challenged, let's say if I'm stuck in Boston traffic and I'm getting upset, my mind is thinking it's a lion. And so the adrenaline, cortisol are not only causing my brain to be alert, but they're shutting down my digestive mechanisms. They're shutting down my reproductive mechanisms because it's not a good time to forage for food or reproduce when I'm being chased by a lion. It's causing my muscle fibers to get ready to fight like mad or run like hell.
So all of this is triggered just at a drop of a hat in traffic or in the workplace.
It's just the stress response, preparing to fight like mad or run like hell.
But we've got nowhere to fight and nowhere to run. You're stuck in traffic, you're stuck in a job.
Or you're sitting at your computer. We become sedentary beings. Back then, when the stress response was activated, we were running.
So this process is
using the energy,
being revved up, and it's got nowhere to go.
And the energy that's being made, the cortisol that's being produced, is taking all this stuff, and because it's not being utilized, it's being deposited in our tire zone. And now we're getting fat. which is stress in itself. Each fat cell, actually each fat cell is actually a little endocrine organ that's secreting these little immune cells that are telling the body that you're in stress.
Right. So if it goes off in an appropriate circumstance, where you can run, where you can fight, where it is an appropriate situation to utilize that adrenaline, it's okay. But if it goes off in a prolonged fashion,
that's right,
then it starts to take a toll. What kind of toll does it take on the body?
Well, again, if you look at the stress response and the physiology, and you know that the reproductive system is shut down, the digestive system is shut down, the muscle fibers become tense and short, especially in the neck, the lower back, the jaw, the shoulders, you know, so you look like you're going to fight like mad or run like hell.
Right.
It's going to happen with the immune system is going to get revved up to protect you in case you get wounded. So there's going to be more inflammation. And over time, especially if 3 weeks of chronic stress, the immune system starts being depressed. So now you're more likely to get cancer or other types of infections. So
this is prolonged over decades. This process goes on. It just suppresses healthy mechanisms in the body.
It's like anything that you look at of the stress response that is in the short term beneficial, like the heart rate and the blood pressure that will increase, like the respiratory rate or the breathing rate that increases. Anything that happens over time too often will start burning out. Right. Whatever you're genetically or environmentally predisposed to will give out, just like a car. So
your weak spots start to show up.
That's right.
Under prolonged stress.
That's right. There isn't one disease that exists that is not as a result of the stress response being out of balance.
Wow.
Not one.
So then, no matter what problem you may be struggling with, learning how to help yourself with mind-body medicine and integrate into your life relaxation response tools will help any disease across the board.
That's correct. This is about deactivating the stress response. That's all it is. And the stress response is going to be set off now when you have a physical problem.
Right.
Because the physical problem is, let's say, painful. So the pain itself is causing the stress response to go off. The emotional upset associated with being in pain is setting the stress response off. The actual cellular part, the inflammation, that's setting the stress response off. The psychological effect of being in pain is setting the stress response off. And that's triggering every single time in the past, 1,000,000 times, 100 times, or 5 times, that you've had any type of similar stress of any of those types.
Right.
So because you're always going back to the past to determine how to act in the present. So it becomes exponential by the time your physical body is broken down. So it's imperative to learn how to deactivate that stress response through all different, whether it's acupuncture or whether it's, you know, herbs, or whether it's the relaxation techniques, exercise, better nutrition, or the cognitive restructuring of beliefs.
All of those factors can start to moderate the fight or flight response by nourishing parasympathetic, by learning how to have the relaxation response switch off the fight or flight.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why sleep is so imperative.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that very few people actually get adequate sleep. When I ask people, how are you sleeping, they go, oh, fine. Right. I said, oh, you're not waking up at night? Oh, well, yeah, 2 to 3 times. And you feel rested when you wake up in the morning? No. Right.
I had heard figures that our generation has the largest sleep debt of any generation.
That's right. That's right. And that's when the body rests and recuperates. Stress itself isn't bad. It's too much of it, no rest in between, and not enough time to give the body to rest, recuperate, and regenerate. That's when our nerves grow. That's when our mind escapes from things. That's when we get to just escape from life, because life can be hard. Right.
So let's go to our next slide right now. And what the hell's going on with this diagram?
Well,
this arrow's going everywhere. What does that mean?
This diagram was just actually, like I mentioned, it's just as looking at the brain. It's getting things all the time. Right. The brain is your sort of your filter of trying to figure out what's going on. So different parts of the brain are lit up when we're under threat, when we're hungry, when we're suffering an illness. Different activities will be called off from the brain. Well, the outside of the brain, that's called the cerebral cortex. And that's really what's doing most of the cognitive processing of the information that's coming in. And once that comes in, you can actually go to the next slide, which is has a little bit more on it, on the next slide. Which will show that from the cerebral cortex, you see it's a little bit more complicated, which isn't actually complicated at all compared to the real slides. But it has different parts like the hypothalamus and the brainstem, which are what's going to set off the systems that are about to be activated for the stress response. So we have on one hand the autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic and sympathetic system that you mentioned. So these are the control
mechanisms in the brain that trigger sympathetic everything. And parasympathetic.
But then we also have the endocrine system that's being stimulated, which is also called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Can you say that again?
The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Don't ask me to say more than that. They get complicated. But essentially, the activation of these brain parts turns on these systems.
Yep.
So the parasympathetic system gets activated first within milliseconds. So that what happens is it gets turned off when you experience a stress. Then within seconds, the sympathetic nervous system is turned on. That's the adrenaline and noradrenaline. Then within minutes, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA for short, gets turned on, which allows the production of the cortisol and other hormones and factors from the adrenal gland also to be produced. So the end result is that you have a lot of hormones and neuropeptides circulating around the body to start affecting the physical change and emotional response that's necessary to overcome this given challenge.
Right, right. So the idea that certainly stress, you've told us that stress will really, and the research shows, suppress immune response, suppress reproductive ability, cause gastrointestinal disorders, hormonal disorders, musculoskeletal disorders, inflammatory responses, just across the board, just about everything we can think of.
That's right.
So what then turns that around? How can we know that being under stress is bad? What can people do? What's some of the simplest tools that we can talk about that will help people turn that around, switch that off?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I would never use the term bad. Nothing is bad, it just is. Okay, because when I say that something's bad, then I make myself feel worse and I put myself into more stress.
Right.
Because again, anytime the brain is feeling any type of challenge to well-being, so thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes are actually going to make things worse than maybe even an action. Like when I have patients that I work with for weight loss, and I said, if you're going to eat that cake, do it with gusto, because the shame and the guilt are actually causing more stress response activation than eating that cake, which is also causing stress response activation. So we do it through the mind-body techniques. There's external interventions that play a role. Like I said, acupuncture, medication, herbs, what have you, because there is a physiological process that's underway that needs to be deactivated. So those things absolutely play a role in what can be done for stress response regulation.
So if most people take stock of their lives and they say, absolutely, right now I am under stress.
That's right.
I can do something about it. And what they can do, they can choose a number of different ways of handling it.
And then there's the piece of what they can do for themselves, and that's the self-care piece. That's the mind-body piece.
So tell us, at the Darcy Wellness Clinic, tell us how you interact with patients and how you begin this process. Say somebody comes to see you, sits down in the chair, first visit, I'm under stress. How do you take it from there?
Well, first of all, the Darcy Wellness Clinic, I have a beautiful office. So the minute they walk into that office, they feel completely calm and at peace. But what we do is we talk about their stress response, their physiology, where it comes from, and I always go back to childhood because that's when the programming first begins, because it's really, for me, based on a distorted assumption or belief system of who I am in this world. And we sort of review all the things that are seen as stressful in their lives or not seen but are causing stress and stress response activation. So the first step is just awareness that, oh, I'm in stress, just like you said, not good or bad, but just I'm aware that I'm out of balance, okay, that I'm in resistance, I'm not in flow in life. And then to say, well, I do have a choice of what to do. So one of those is to start reprogramming the mind and body to remember what it's like to be quiet and in stillness. So that would be eliciting the relaxation response 15 to 20 minutes a day.
So tell us a little bit, what is the relaxation response?
So the relaxation response is like I said, another term for meditation, but it comprises all forms of quieting the mind and quieting the body over a period of time where the physiological parameters of the stress response are reversed. Like watching the stress response film go backwards. So it could be transcendental meditation where you're repeating a mantra, it could be Tai Chi, it could be yoga, it could be Vipassana meditation, it doesn't really matter. Mindfulness meditation, in other words.
I had heard of a study out of the Deaconess Mind Body Institute. It was around high blood pressure, and it was 80% of patients who underwent 20 minutes of progressive relaxation from head to toe, methodically moving through the body, 20 minutes a day, were able to reduce blood pressure by 80%, and 80% 18% of that 80% were able to come off of blood pressure medication completely.
That's right. And
that's a phenomenal,
that's right.
I mean, if that was a drug, Wall Street would really like that drug.
And it's cheap and has no side effects.
That's right, and you don't have to pay.
No co-pays. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's not just blood pressure.
Right.
That's the beauty. The Mind-Body Medical Institute has done research for 30 years on all this.
Could you tell us about the infertility one too? And there was
They've increased
fertility.
Fertility has increased up to 50%.
50%.
They have increased. They have reduced pain, reduced fatigue, improved sleep. Off medications, you name it, the study has been done.
Just simply from a progressive relaxation response, relaxing through the body,
that's right.
Taking 20 minutes a day.
That's right.
That's an astounding result. I mean, if you came out with a drug and you said to somebody, okay, this drug will increase your fertility by 50%.
Right.
Will lower your blood pressure, will, you know, reduce PMS. I mean, that would be a phenomenal success.
That's
so
right.
why do you think, why aren't more physicians aware of it? I mean, these are profound impacts.
Because they're not doing it themselves. Because it's work.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a quick fix.
It's not a quick pill.
It's not a quick pill. It's not going to, you know, you have to do something.
Yeah.
This is about you becoming empowered and you understanding that you co-create your existence, you co-create your life, nobody's doing anything to you.
Right.
That it's up to you. If you want to be healthy, you need to do something about it. And it's not only just, you know, the relaxation response of doing that, you know, 20 minutes a day, it's all things. It's working on your belief systems and your distorted beliefs and
so it's
and
more
the negative
holistically
thoughts,
taking
your nutrition, your exercise, because all those things, when they're out of balance, are creating stress response imbalance and making you sick.
Right. Let's go to our next slide right now. And this kind of picks up the point of the problems, you know, are caused, you know, just about everything, a gambit across the, you know, across the spectrum there. And if we could go to our next one, please, that would be good.
Right, and this slide is just actually what happens when we've overdone it.
Yeah.
So when the stress response is actually burnt out, we've been under stress for so long, or there was huge amounts of stress that sort of did us in, we actually have burnt out the system. And so instead of becoming hyper-aroused, and it's like, you know, I'm being chased by a lion and I've gotten in my car to get away, but there's no gas in my tank.
Right.
So I'm stepping on the pedal, but nothing happens. So with these cases you see with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, those types of, and even the aging process, actually. Menopause, for instance, is part of a burnout physiology.
So explaining this process to somebody at the first visit, say at the Darcy Wellness Clinic with you, you explain it to them, you then take stock, develop an awareness of the issue, then where would you go from there? Would you start to
Then I actually start giving them the homework.
Yeah.
I give them the homework of what they need to do, or
and what would that look like? Literally journaling, or
it could be. I'll give them a CD.
Yeah.
So they can start listening the relaxation response.
So every day you would get them to elicit
at least 20 minutes a day.
A relaxation response. Yeah.
That's right. I give them affirmations that will help them first, as they recognize the distorted or negative thoughts that are creating their stress. Affirmations that will be the opposite of that, because as I explained.
We'll give an example of an affirmation.
For instance, the mind, remember, the subconscious mind does not have a will of its own. It's only going according to what it's been taught over the years. So if over the years I think I'm not, you know, nobody loves me, I'm not supported.
Right. I'll die if I don't do this.
Right, the all or nothing negative thinking. Yeah. So I'll give them an affirmation that will be the opposite of that. And in fact, I tell them, you don't have to believe this, because they said, well, I'm going to have a hard time saying that. I said, I know. I don't care.
Yeah.
This isn't about what you feel right now. This is what we want the subconscious mind to believe, which will actually alter your physiology. So a good one is, I trust that I'm loved and supported. Something as simple as that. Yeah. Because most of us don't. Because when I'm in stress, I feel helpless, I feel alone, I feel isolated, nobody loves me, nobody cares. Right. That's stress.
I thought it was just me that thought.
Ha.
So you start to make people aware of it, they start to journal, they start to do relaxation response on a daily basis. So nutrition is a part of this also, the idea
the vitamins,
of looking after
nutrition.
themselves, making sure they're getting supplements that they need.
That's right. Well, it's rebuilding the system.
Exercise.
And I never want people to think that this is for life. Yeah. You know, drugs or medications or herbs or supplements, they're supplements. I want people to remember what it's like to how we ate when we first evolved, you know, eating a lot of greens and eating things, you know, saying, if I really cared about myself, if I loved myself, would I eat that food?
Right.
Would I put that in my body? Would I date that man?
Yeah.
You know, would I do these things to myself?
Yeah.
And as we start learning to feel better about ourselves and to really love who we are, we actually will have better healthy behaviors and choices.
Right. So maybe we could just talk quickly about if you're under an enormous stress or a situation of abuse, say in childhood, can that damage the basic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic, and can people recover from those early traumas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there is damage that happens, but I don't think anything is irreversible. I think that what's happened with medicine is it's sort of set these diagnoses and statistics and made these rules for everybody. And our mind is so powerful that it says, well, because you said so, then it has to be so. And because statistics said that this is how something progresses, it has to be so, but it's not true. The mind, because it's so powerful, and the body so resilient, it can create a lot of changes, and it's up to that individual and whether or not they want to put in the work to create those changes. It's really about repatterning and reprogramming. So it's being stuck in a groove, being stuck in a pattern. So whether it's from childhood or wherever it's from, just repatterning and getting back into a healthier way of being, we'll be able to leave that behind and create greater health. And it's not easy, especially for people who've had history of abuse, and that's really why the work that I do is so important, because it's based in love. So the central premise based on love. I wanted to ask us quickly, because we're running out of time, the idea of post-traumatic stress too, the idea that, say, somebody's been in Iraq, been in a war zone, we now have an entire generation going to hopefully come back from Iraq at some point. A lot of them are going to bring back, I mean, there's terrible statistics on how many of them will have post-traumatic stress. What would your advice be for someone who's been in that prolonged situation, what can they do? It would be the same as I would do with everyone, but we'd also go deeper into sort of making meaning out of the situation, and this is really helping them develop the spiritual belief system that helps them feel connected to something larger themselves and make meaning from the trauma that they've experienced, as rather than something that, oh, what has happened to me, as then, oh, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I help my community so it can better the community? Rather than going from an I going into a we. And so developing a spiritual belief system is very important. And again, as I said before, love is a very big piece in helping people heal from that. Especially take to the last 3 sites. Well, this is done by a famous artist, actually. This is some of your artwork. That's right. Yeah, and the central theme around love. Maybe that's right. So love is the ultimate relaxation response. It absolutely is. If you look at the neurobiochemical process of love, it is the opposite of the stress response. I call it, the fear response. There's only 2 ways of being, either in fear or in love. Fear is sort of the, the bottom of stress, or anger, or any type of emotion, or any type of experience, when your survival is being threatened. But when I'm in a state of love, I'm in a state of complete union, I'm okay, I'm safe, and it's the physiological opposite of being in the stress response. So that's enough to decrease heart rate, decrease blood pressure, help the breathing rate, help the metabolic rate. These all have physiological responses. Hugs do that. Hugs do that. Yeah, that's why I hug my patients. Hugs do that. Just a hug a day, keeps the doctor away. It's true. Well, Eva, thanks very much for joining us today. It's been illuminating, so thanks very much. Thank you. So I want to thank you for joining us, and we hope that you've learned something about a non-drug, non-surgical option to handle stress, to increase your health and well-being and of those around you. And from myself, Geoff Darcy, and Dr. Eva Selhub, medical doctor specializing in mind-body medicine at the Darcy Wellness Clinic, we wish you and your loved ones health and wellness. Well done. Very good.